At the same time yesterday, there was a major hearing here in Washington about the Biden impeachment, and it pretty much went off the rails in every respect that you can possibly imagine. The Democratic side, on the Republican side, some of the things that we did not learn, but there were at least some good sound bites that we could show you. First and foremost was Tony Bobulinski, the infamous Hunter Biden business associate, testifying, sparring with some of the members of Congress on the Democratic side. Let's take a listen.
Yet the same people preaching this mantra know better. They continue to lie directly to the American people without hesitation and remorse. Rep. Dan Goldman and Jamie Raskin, both lawyers, and Mr. Goldman, a former prosecutor with the SDNY from New York, will continue to lie today in this hearing and then go straight to the media to tell more lies. Hunter Biden's defense attorney, Abby Lowell, weaponizes letters to Congress to try to smear my name
Mr. Chairman.
The cold hard facts.
Mr. Chairman.
In an attempt to save his powerfully connected client and his father. I challenge Mr. Lowell to make those claims on national television so he can be held accountable for his lies.
Come to order. Mr. Bobulinski, please proceed.
Okay.
Please proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the minority.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it saved his time, but he called members of this committee liars, and I just want to know whether the order and decorum requirements of House Rule 11 apply to witnesses appearing before the committee. Does it apply or does it not?
There's decorum from the members. We've asked for that. There's no language that I'm aware of pertaining to a witness.
Thank you.
That was a good day's Krystal. What the whole day was like. But look, listen, Bobulinski, we've known about him since what, 2020? He did the Tucker Carlson interview back in Fox. If everybody wants to remember, his claims have been wide out there to see. This is part of the problem with this overall hearing is almost all the information has been publicly available now for 2 years. And I'm not saying it's not even important, but they have not been able to prove from there and a smoking gun of a monetary connection between Hunter Biden and between Joe Biden. Even with the subpoena power and all the others that have come to light, the best that they have been able to find are the IRS whistleblowers that came forward. That's resulted in a tax investigation against Hunter, but they have not been able to put a name on a single wire transfer. I mean, Krystal, we were talking about, I mean, in a certain sense too. Look, the information is there. Hunter is blatantly and outrageously corrupt. He benefited off of his father's name. Whether his dad profited or not, it's not 100% certain. He definitely knew about it, and he definitely lied about some of his previous interactions. That seems to be the best that we're going to get out of this.
Yeah. The other witness, by the way, was some dude who's serving time in an Alabama prison for securities fraud. So that was
it Lev? Parnas?
It was, no, Jason Galanis,
okay.
Another former associate of Hunter Biden, you know, gives you a sense of the type of characters he was doing business with.
Which is bad.
As well.
It's definitely bad.
Which is bad. I mean, look, there's a lot going on here. No one would welcome a genuine investigation into corruption that goes across, you know, on both sides of the aisle more than myself. Mm-hmm. I entirely welcome the notion of taking serious the idea of corruption, even if, because the Supreme Court has ruled that actual illegal corruption is so incredibly narrow, even if it doesn't meet that standard, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't know and care about the fact that Hunter Biden and James Biden, these other characters, were trading on the Biden name and basically, you know, promising Joe Biden access and giving Joe Biden access in certain, you know, documented instances. Doesn't mean we shouldn't care about it. But a couple of things have happened here. I mean, first of all, Republicans are obviously completely hypocrites because they don't care when it's Jared Kushner and Trump or Trump and Liv Gulf or these other entanglements or taking money into his hotel or whatever. They don't give a shit. So they're obviously hypocritical, and so their claims don't have a lot of, they don't feel particularly weighty when the hypocrisy is so blatant. That's number one. Number two, because they made such extraordinary and unproven claims about Joe Biden directly getting cash that have never borne out, they set the bar extremely high for themselves and, you know, even I think by their own standards are completely failing to meet that bar. Another thing that I would say here is, you know, perhaps it would be a better world if this was the number one public concern about Joe Biden, but this isn't even the top issue that if Republicans are just looking at political gain to press vis-a-vis Joe Biden, like, you know what the problems are. You know that the biggest one of them is just that people feel like he's too freaking old and they're not sure that he can handle another 4 years. They're not really buying the idea that he's the, head of some elaborate corrupt crime family. And it is a little dissonant with the other messaging about him being too old and too infirm, which I think lands more with what people are experiencing and their biggest concerns about Joe Biden at this point. Let's just say if corruption was the #1 issue in this campaign, I'm not sure that would go well for Donald Trump either. In addition to, all the rest of what I've laid out here. So it's kind of farcical. I mean, I think, Saagar, you tell me because you're more in touch with this. It seems like even the Republican base is kind of frustrated with the lack of there in terms of these hearings, their lack of inability to actually directly prove those links and find that smoking gun, given what was promised to them at the beginning of this.
Well, I can play this out of order, guys. If we could go ahead and play D3, that kind of hits home what you're talking about. This is a Newsmax host who's getting very upset with Jim Jordan, being like, hey, guys, when is this actually going to go somewhere? Let's take a listen.
Is impeachment the next step? Are you going to hold a vote on the House floor? I know it's up to Mike Johnson, but the margins, Congressman, you lost Kevin McCarthy. Ken Buck left last week. George Santos was ousted. Unless you get Democratic votes, this is going to be real tough. So it kind of seems like you're chasing your tail at this point because this is not going to go anywhere.
No, fair question. And we got a small majority. Everyone understands that, not just on this issue, but on a host of issues. Our job is, under the Constitution, is to do oversight of the executive branch. We are doing that. We're going to continue to do that. There's no time limit in the Constitution on how long you can do an investigation.
So as you can see, the Newsmax host was not very happy there with Mr. Jordan. He's like, hey, what's actually going on? And I do think some of the Republican base feels that way. And this is part of the issue. I do think overpromising was a big one. A lot of it comes back to, I think a lot of it is just deep frustration that people are not willing to take the Hunter Biden laptop story more seriously. And look, I don't even necessarily disagree. I think it should have gotten its due, at the time in terms of actually talking about the corruption allegations. But the truth is that this has now been before the American people now for quite some time. And it seems, unfortunately, maybe because of the Trump factor, maybe because they haven't been able to prove a direct thing with Biden, that it has not been able to actually penetrate anything beyond kind of the Fox News ecosystem. On the other side of the coin, though, Krystal, is Mr. Jared Moskowitz. This is a Democratic congressman. And this is a continued strategy, right, is to tie any of these questions into Russiagate and to trying to saying that you're some sort of Putin puppet. Here is the Democratic congressman who is donning a Vladimir Putin mask ahead of the hearing, trying to talk to reporters and saying that James Comer, the head of the committee, is in Putin's pocket. Let's take a listen.
Congressman, can you explain what you're wearing? Oh, I just came to thank James Comer for taking all of our intelligence and using it in the committee. Maybe he can come see the technology in our grocery stores. Thank you.
Congressman, do you think his behavior is kind of immature?
So he's got the Putin Halloween mask there on Krystal.
I hate everything.
That's
got
to be one of the more humiliating things.
What a hellscape! What a hellscape of a political system this is. Like, how embarrassing. This was why I was so distraught at the idea that Paul Manafort was going to be brought back onto
because of all this
Trump campaign, because it's just, the Russiagate, it just never ends. Like, are you a child wearing a Putin mask? What are you doing? Even some of the mainstream reporters were like, isn't this a little immature?
Yeah, Congressman, don't you think this is a little immature? I'm like, yeah, definitely. Anyway, so that was the main result. Doesn't seem like it's going to go much further. I know that there's been a vote or whatever on the impeachment investigation, I know, within the House of Representatives. But unless they come up with something soon, this is probably going to be the high water mark of the overall thing.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.